All right, everyone, we're going to begin going over our fluency for today. Now, the question's asking us to choose all the expressions that are equal to the sum of 2 and 65 hundredths and 3 and 78 hundredths. When we have a question that says choose all means that we may have more than one answer. So we can't just do one and be done. We have to do them all to make sure that we have eliminated or correctly solved the correct answers. So we're looking for the sum though. We have talked about the word sum and fluency, which is the answer to an addition problem. So that means that we're going to be adding our two numbers in the question before we begin even looking at our choices, because we have to find what the sum of those two numbers are. So I'm going to start off by clicking and holding down and dragging my numbers over into my box over here, because that's where I'm going to be looking for the answer to match A, B, C, or D. So the first number we have is 2 and 65 hundredths. So I'm going to begin by putting my 2 and 65 hundredths down. And I'm just clicking and holding down and dragging them over to this box. Okay, and then we know sum means to add, so we're going to be adding those. And then before I start putting my 3 and 78 hundredths, I'm going to put my decimal point down. So I know I lined them up, because that's the first thing that we need to make sure we do when we add decimals is line them up. And then I'm going to begin putting the numbers in the correct place value. So the 3 is in the 1 spot. And then we're going to put the 7 and 8 behind the decimal point in their place values. So the 7's in the tenths. And then the 8 is in the hundredths. Okay, so now I'm going to begin to add 8 plus 5. 8 plus 5 is 13. So I'm going to put my 3. And then I'm going to bring up my 1. So I have 1 plus 6 is 7. 7 plus 7 is 14. Now I forgot to drop down my decimal point before I started adding, so I'm going to add it in now, but please make sure you do that so you don't lose track of where that decimal point goes. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, so you're going to put your 6. So you have 6 and 43 hundredths. So what we're looking for is we're looking for the answers of these 4 questions to equal 6 and 43 hundredths. If it does not equal that, we will not be picking it. So let's start with A. A says the sum of 2 and 56 hundredths and 3 and 87 hundredths. So we're going to sit here in our first box, we're going to add 2. We're going to put the decimal point there to make sure that we line our digits and decimal points up when we're adding. 5 and 6. And then I'm going to put my decimal point in the correct spot before I put my 3 and 87 hundredths, because I want to make sure that I put the numbers in the right place value and underneath the right digits so I can add successfully. So I'm going to put our 8 and then our 7. And then we know sum, we already talked about, meant to add, so we're adding those two. So we have 6 plus 7, which is 13. But before I put 13 down, see, even I sometimes forget to do it. What you got to make sure we don't forget to do it is put our decimal point down first. Drop it like it's hot, remember? So then we have 6 plus 7, which is 13. We put our 3, and then we put our 1. And then we have 5 plus 1, which is 6, and 6 plus 8, which is 14. So we put our 4, and then we put our 1 above. And we have 1 plus 2, which is 3. 3 plus 3, which is 6. So we have 6 and 43 hundredths. That matches our answer that we solved when we found the sum of our question. So I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to put it around A, because that is an expression that equals the sum of 2 and 65 hundredths and 3 and 78 hundredths. Okay, so let's go to B now. B says the sum of 3 and 78 hundredths and 2 and 65 hundredths. So I'm going to start sum. I see that word. Sum means that we are adding. We're finding the answer to an addition problem. So I'm going to begin to add. So I have 3. So I start off by just putting my first number down. And then sum means to add. So we're adding. And then we have 2. Before I do, I'm going to put my decimal point. So I make sure I line up my decimal points and I line up the digits. So I put my 2, my 6, my 5. Okay, I drop my decimal like it's hot. I have 8 plus 5, which is 13. So I put my 3, bring up my 1. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 plus 6 is 14. So I put my 4, bring up my 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So it matches. So that's another circle I'm going to put around for B. So right now, see how when it says choose all, right now I have 2 answers, but I still have 2 more problems that I need to find. So the next one, it says the difference between 10 and 3 and 67 hundredths. So you want to make sure that when you know that you're reading very carefully your wording in the questions or the statements that they're giving you to solve, because difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So you want to make sure that you're subtracting these 2 numbers. So we're going to start with 10. Now, this is our first time seeing a whole number in fluency. We want to make sure that a whole number, the decimal point is always after the number. So you put that number down and then you always put a dot after it and use your filler, which we talked about. A filler is of a placeholder is 0. So I always put 2 zeros just to be safe. You can always add more, or you don't need to add 2, you can add 1, but we're always going to add 2, and if I need to add more, I can. So then I'm going to put my decimal point down for my next number of 3 and 67 hundredths. So I put my decimal point, I line it up, and then if I notice, the 3 is the digit in front of the decimal. So that means it is in the 1 spot. So I want to make sure that 3 stays in that 1 spot. So I'm going to put my 3 underneath that 0. And then the 6 and the 7 are in the tenths and hundredths. Okay, and we said difference meant to subtract, so I'm going to put my subtraction sign down. And then I'm going to drop my decimal like it's hot, because the same thing with subtraction is the same rules with addition. When you're adding decimals or subtracting decimals, you want to make sure you line up your digits and your decimal points. And then you always want to make sure you drop that decimal like it's hot before you start to solve. So 0 minus 7 you cannot do, so you got to go next door. Next door is like, sure, I'll give you, you can take some from me. So that first 0 becomes a 1, a 10, I'm sorry, and the next 0 is going to become a 9. The reason it becomes a 9 is because you have to go over all the way to this 1 and take from, because you can't take anything from zeros. So in order to take from this 0 has to take from the 1. So the first 1 becomes a 0. Then this 0, oops, it didn't go, it went behind it. So hold on, let me. It becomes a 0. There it is. I don't know why that one was there. So it becomes a 0, and then the next 0 becomes a 9. So now we can solve. 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 6 is 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. And 0, and there you could put a 0 here for its placeholder, but 0 minus 0 is 0. So we have 6 and 33 hundredths. That does not equal 6 and 43 hundredths, so we do not want to circle C. So now we're going to start by subtracting the 9 and 51 hundredths from, and 3 Okay, so I'm putting my 9 and 51/100ths down. Minus 3 decimal point 0 and 8. Drop my decimal like it's hot. 1 minus 8 you cannot do, so we have to go to the 5. 5 take away from the 5. The 5 becomes a 4. The 1 becomes an 11. 11 minus 8 is 3. 4 minus 0 is 4. 9 minus 3 is 6. And that matches our answer. So we will circle also D. So you have 3 answers for this, right? So this I know took us a long time. So hopefully that you have time to watch this. And if you have any questions, please ask me or send me an email so I can help you out.